The New York DA's probe into the Trump Organization has just hit a new high. Now, on the one hand, it's been going for years. The DA won the Supreme Court battle for Trump's taxes, then impaneled a grand jury, then summoned a key financial witness before that grand jury. But now the new high is moving towards a potentially key indictment as soon as this summer, according to that major report in the New York Times that picks up on the big name in the case.
Allen Weisselberg. He's the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization.
Allen Weisselberg.
Allen Weisselberg.
Allen Weisselberg was everything to that organization.
Always Allen Weisselberg on the check.
I think that all roads lead to Allen Weisselberg.
The gatekeeper for every penny that came in and went out.
Whatever Trump did and spent, whatever he told the government or didn't about all of that, Weisselberg's involved. He's the centerpiece of Trump's financial operation. And while the DA wants to know what he knows about Trump, this new reporting shows the heat on what Weisselberg himself has been doing, whether he illegally hid valuable benefits or compensation, ranging from tuition payments to evidence on the full story behind his Mercedes-Benz. And the grand jury's hearing evidence on him. And that's what's so concerning for Donald Trump here. We already had clues that Weisselberg was key. You see it in the reports, in the discussion. The New York Times, though, is now putting the talk of indictments in a headline because their sources say the grand jury's already getting the case against Weisselberg. And you know the old saying about grand juries that they can indict a ham sandwich. Well, if they're hearing the case against Weisselberg, the next step is to decide whether or not to charge him. The final goal of the DA is clear. Put enough heat on Weisselberg with a credible fear or outcome that he or even his family would go to prison, and then that is supposed to make him flip on Trump. And the same story notes what we've also been discussing and reporting, the signs that Weisselberg has, up to this point, quote, rebuffed cooperation requests. We also know this particular DA, Cy Vance, his term ends in December. He got the taxes. It appears he has a lot of evidence. He has several witnesses. He has a grand jury impaneled. And very soon, he'll have to take that all together, and it will be time to either move or move on. Now, I mentioned this report that has so many people in legal and Trump circles paying attention. Well, we are thrilled to be joined by one of the New York Times journalists who broke this very story with his team, Jonah Bromwich. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Ari.
You don't put indictments in a New York Times headline based on nothing. Obviously, you're not here to discuss confidential sources and the like, but what gave you in your reporting process the confidence to say not that this individual is under investigation or that could be bad, but rather, as you put it, he could face charges as soon as this summer?
Well, it's exactly what you said, Ari. Grand jury has been hearing evidence about Mr. Weisselberg. We know that the prosecutors in Mr. Vance's office have really obtained a full picture of his financial situation. They've gotten his personal tax returns. What it looks like is that they're finding out kind of everything they can find out about Mr. Weisselberg. And so the stage that they've reached, the evidence that they're hearing in the grand jury, just gives us that confidence to be able to report that.
One thing that happens with especially a paper that's as widely read and studied as the New York Times is people debate what things mean online in the comments, et cetera. Now we get to just ask you. So when I read this line in the lead, setting up, quote, the possibility he could face charges this summer, does that mean that charges are more likely than not?
I always think questions like that are interesting. We report what we know. And so what you read in the lead is what is true. You know, the office appears to have entered the final stages of the investigation. He could face charges as soon as this summer. Now, at this point, there are times at which we know more than we've reported yet, and then we report it. This is what we reported, and this is what we know.
Do you think the DA's office likes seeing a story like this out because it puts even more heat on Weisselberg?
There is no question that the DA's office is trying to put pressure on Mr. Weisselberg, but they can kind of put that pressure on him themselves. They have the tools to do that. They don't need our help to do that. And of course, that is what they're doing. They are trying to put pressure on him right now.
In reporting on this grand jury, which is very secretive, are you finding it similar to others, even tougher given its high profile, or perhaps you're getting more clues because there are so many people and lawyers and witnesses around?
That's a good question, and it's not one I really have the experience to speak to. I couldn't compare it. Each investigation is its own creature, is its own beast. This one is what it is, and so it's hard to compare it. I hate to kind of dance out of that question, but it's not an easy comparison to make.
You don't have a law degree, right, Jonah?
I don't have a law degree. You do, right?
Oh, I happen to, but I was going to say your dancing and parsing, which is part of the duties of your job, is it's at a lawyerly or Talmudic level. So take that for what it's worth. Let me play a little bit of one of the witnesses that we've caught up with here, Jennifer Weisselberg, who, as we've reported and your story mentions, has other disagreements with Allen Weisselberg. Folks can factor that into the analysis, but she's making claims that presumably she might also share in these high-stakes interviews with the DA's office about the lengths he went to hide basic things like tax returns, even from real estate arrangements. Take a listen.
Allen himself admitted to me that his taxes and pay stubs, he said, I'll never show those. Oh, no, he's supposed to be the guarantor on my apartment, my lease, after I was getting divorced. And he said, when I was getting divorced, excuse me. And he said, oh, no, I can't show my taxes. I can't show my pay stubs. And I thought, why not? Basically he was saying they're illegal and I'm not releasing them. It was during the Cohen SDNY investigation. Pretty telling.
What does your reporting show about the criminal legal exposure Mr. Weisselberg could face in this office if they do determine evidence that he did not accurately account for or pay taxes on large benefits or compensation from Trump org?
That is something that we know that the prosecutors are looking at. They're looking at something called fringe benefits, which are a specific type of benefit. It could be car rentals, it could be apartment, it could be tuition for a grandchild. And that's something we know in part that the prosecutors are very focused on. There are situations in which Mr. Weisselberg could be in a lot of trouble depending on what he did in taxes on those kinds of benefits. But in terms of how exposed he is, I think we'll have to wait and see more and see what the case, if an indictment is actually brought, is.
And finally, briefly, what do you find in your reporting is his best possible defense?
I think if the case were fringe benefits alone, that would be a highly unusual case. Those are extremely rare to bring. So until we see the full case, what we know now makes it difficult to anticipate what he might use to defend himself. But what we know now is not the full case. So again, it's hard to predict how exactly his lawyers will work on his behalf, given that we're only partially seeing what's really going on.
Yeah. Well, you have a big story there with your colleagues, Jonah Bromwich. Thank you for telling us a little bit more about it on The Beat.